From scandal to shuffle, journalist Melvin Mansaray exposes President Bio's controversial reassignment drama, how Sierra Leone's leadership crisis reflects a deeper African problem when corruption is reassigned, not removed. Welcome to the Bold African Voice, BAV, where truth is loud and accountability is louder. I'm your host, Ahisatu Kamara Kargbo. When a scandal rocks a nation, real leaders act. But in Sierra Leone, it seems the script has flipped. Journalist Melvin Mansaray says President Bio's so-called reform might just be another reshuffle. In the small West African nation of Sierra Leone, journalist and social commentator Melvin Tejan Mansaray has taken aim at President Julius Maada Bio's recent decision to move the former chief immigration officer from that post into a different government role, namely in the drug law enforcement side. Mansaray calls the move insignificant, Sierra loaded. Here's the background as per the sources. A viral video allegedly showed the immigration head receiving a gift from a Dutch fugitive and drug kingpin Johannes Leidekers, which raised major red flags. In response, President Bio's administration sacked the officer from immigration, but then reassigned him into a new role in drug law enforcement, rather than dismissing him entirely or launching a full transparent investigation. Mansaray says that if the move is essentially sack then reuse, with no serious investigation, then accountability is undermined and public confidence takes a hit. He questions whether genuine political will exists. He further argues that the whole immigration system in Sierra Leone has been plagued by systemic failures even before the current administration, and that the government should itself be looked at for possible drug-related corruption. He cites reports from the Anti-Corruption Commission, Sierra Leone, ACC, about alleged houses bought in the United States and other leads that he claims have not been acted upon. In short, Mansaray is saying the move might be more cosmetic than real, and if it is cosmetic, then it risks being a reassignment masquerading as reform.
That was, again, insignificant. You sack the man, whether the man is guilty or not, a day in Aethus. Nobody know. If there was solid political willingness, that man should have been investigated by now report for the common. So the president the BBC, what did they do? So immigration, not only immigration, they are implicated. Go and look State Department reports on overstay and handling of with passports. It is very clear that immigration, not today, not under SLPP, self, don't blame SLPP. Immigration has been under systemic failure from before President Bio came to power. Then la be honest with her. But waiting, don't be dishonest under President Bio regime. Now that there is no willingness, even when we see iota of evidence, like that party and other thing, and it failed for pursue those leads. Now make President Bio in your administration grand in this thing on drug and cartel and Sierra Leone grand. Because even when they are opponents where there are leads to go and investigate.
But now one of the people in the video, they lead the drugs fights now, not the agency.
So you just question the political commitment. Now the man will get motuka there, we see enable for track, or I get the motuka there.
But the man send a gift. He tell Parliament
and there are suspicion that this gift comes from some cartel. That is the suspicion and allegation. And who investigated that? The ACC, they said enable for tracker. In real seriousness, if President Bio wants to fight this, that man first, from what name don't call first, it will be set aside. Enough of we get further appointments. You pull him under immigration. Two connected. So in fact, when you look, when you join 222, you pull him under immigration, you go put on a drug law enforcement. It's like for say, I don't know. The government should be investigated.
Who therefore investigates the government?
There are international bodies. Interpol can investigate people in the government perceivably or allegedly or really involved in government. They can do that. But again, you ask me if the government is willing to let that out. So we have institutions like OCCPL. We have investigative journalists, I mean, we need to come out.
Same body don't put reports out, don't expose even the former immigration officer. They don't tell we about houses that we buy in the United States. This is the only material for the president you use for take action against them people there.
Circumstantial evidence can be also used. So if the SEC was serious, these are things they should not let go under the bridge.
Critical analysis. Why this matters. At first glance, one might shrug, oh, just a bureaucratic reshuffle. But digging deeper, several key issues emerge. 1. Symbolism versus substance. Reshufflings and reassignments are cheap and fast. But if you move someone who may have been implicated, or at least whose position comes under strong suspicion, into a different role, especially one that overlaps with the problem area, drug law enforcement, then the symbolism signals weak accountability rather than strong. In effect, we're doing something, but not we're doing the right thing. Mansaray's critique rests on that distinction. He's arguing the public sees the something, but not the right thing. 2. Incentives and opportunity. When officials who were responsible for a domain with alleged wrongdoing, immigration corruption, cartel gifts, get reassigned into a spot adjacent to or squarely in the same risk zone, drug law enforcement, you create a perverse incentive. Maybe the repositioned official now controls or is deeply involved in the very area that was allegedly compromised. That gives pause. Is the government placing a problem or placing someone with already tainted oversight into a critical role? Mansaray is raising exactly that. 3. Public confidence and institutional integrity. One of the bigger casualties in many African governments is not just corruption itself, but the public's trust in the institutions meant to enforce integrity. If the public comes to believe that reshuffles are a tactic to hide or shuffle away problems rather than solve them, then the broader system suffers. Citizens may think, why bother reporting wrongdoing? Law enforcement may feel emboldened. Oversight bodies may feel weak. Mansaray explicitly ties this move to weakening rather than strengthening accountability. 4. Pre-existing long-term problems. Mansaray reminds us that the immigration service in Sierra Leone has been plagued by systemic failures, even before the Bio administration. That means the reassignment is not sitting in a vacuum of novelty. If the problem has long gestated, then a single swap or jump doesn't address root causes: culture, resources, oversight, legal frameworks, external networks. He notes that the ACC's undisclosed investigations, e.g., houses in the USA allegedly bought by the same official, further illustrate that the rotating door isn't tackling the underlying dynamics. Africa-wide comparison. Is Sierra Leone unique? Hint, not really. Many African countries have undergone similar dilemmas. The question isn't whether this is happening, but how it is handled and whether lessons are learned. Let's compare a few. Nigeria. In Nigeria, for example, one sees regular high-profile sackings of heads of agencies, e.g., immigration, customs, when scandals break. However, what sometimes happens is the former official gets another appointment or finds new government work, thus raising questions whether the action was punitive or performative. The key difference: did the move trigger a full investigation? Did it lead to prosecutions? Did it reform the institution? Often in Nigeria, the answer is inconsistent. Kenya. In Kenya, the issue of reshuffles also arises when a major corruption scandal hits a public service. Sometimes the head is replaced, but the policy reforms lag, the institution remains underfunded, and oversight continues weak. What Kenya does more regularly, or attempts, is bring civil society and media pressure to bear, which increases the chance that a reassignment is followed by an investigation or legal action. Ghana and Sierra Leone, similarities and contrasts. In neighboring Ghana, there have been examples of senior officials being moved sideways rather than dismissed, leading to public outcry. Sierra Leone's case becomes particularly sensitive because the reassigned official is now going into drug law enforcement, arguably the exact area where questions of transparency are highest. If Ghana or Kenya reposition someone from, say, customs into anti-smuggling oversight, the signal to the public would be almost identical. We reassigned you from the post. You were accused of mismanaging into the oversight of the same problem. So overall, Sierra Leone is not unique, but the mix of immigration plus drug law enforcement plus public suspicion makes it especially fraught. Forward-looking approach. What should be done? What steps could increase the chance that this reassignment leads to genuine reform rather than more bureaucracy theater? Here are some suggestions. A. Transparent investigation and public accountability. Instead of just the sack and move, initiate a full investigation, publish its terms of reference, involve independent oversight, civil society, international partners. Until that happens, the signal remains ambiguous. Mansaray is right to call in international bodies. Sierra loaded. B. Reform the institutions, not just the names. Immigration and drug law enforcement agencies need structural reforms, clear rules on gifts, asset declarations, external audits, rotation of officials, boost in resources and capacity. If the culture stays the same, then a reshuffle is cosmetic. C. Safe and incentivized whistleblowing. If someone offers a gift from a fugitive or cartel, the easiest way for the system to fail is to not know. Encourage internal whistleblowers, protect them, incentivize them. Strengthen the ACC or related body. D. Regional cooperation. Because the gift scandal involves a Dutch fugitive and presumably cross-border networks, Sierra Leone should cooperate with international law enforcement, Interpol, EU agencies, and other African countries to trace the flow of money and shipping migration links. The broader Africa-wide dimension of illicit finance means no country is an island. E. Public communication and trust building. The government must not only act, but appear to act. Regular public updates, hearing findings, publishing asset registers, and being transparent about why certain people are reassigned with clear criteria would build trust. F. Avoid laughing while the house burns. Humor helps, but only up to a point. The public might laugh at the absurdity of immigration chief moves into drug law enforcement. But if the laugh turns to skepticism and cynicism, of course nobody expects them to change, then the damage is real. The government must avoid becoming a punchline in the public's eye. A touch of humor, because why not? Imagine the headline: Immigration chief who allegedly accepted gift from a fugitive becomes drug law enforcement boss. Same guy, new desk, bigger badge, same questions. It's a bit like if someone in charge of the office stationery cupboard got caught hoarding the pens, then was moved to be in charge of the company's budget oversight department, and everyone said, that's a bit convenient, isn't it? We're not saying the officials are innocent or guilty here. We're saying the optics are what matter. If you play musical chairs with personnel without changing the music, people will notice. Latest news update. As of 20th October 2025, the source article indicates that Mansaray spoke about the case on Liberty Online TV, calling the reassignment insignificant. There is no publicly available update on whether the ACC has launched a full investigation or whether the newly assigned official has begun in the drug law enforcement role in earnest. The story remains live in Sierra Leonean media and public discourse. Given the public interest, we may expect media follow-ups on whether the gift from Johannes Leideckers is being traced internationally. Pressure from civil society groups for transparency of the reassigned official's new role. Possibly leaked documents or revelations of asset purchases in the U.S., which Mansaray claimed exist, being publicly released or responded to by the government. A test of whether the reassignment will be accompanied by actual institutional reform or quietly forgotten. What to watch for. Does the ACC issue a public statement or open a formal investigation following these allegations? Will the reassigned officials' performance in the new role be monitored and evaluated independently? Will there be legal or disciplinary action taken if wrongdoing is established? Are there any disclosures about the alleged houses in the United States the journalist referenced? How will public trust move in Sierra Leone? Will citizens see action, see reform, or see simply more reshuffling? Will other African governments look at this and reflect? Will Sierra Leone become a case study of token reshuffle versus real change, or of reshuffle triggering real reform? Continental context. Africa's endless dance of sack, shuffle, and smile. Across Africa, the reshuffle remedy has become a kind of political ritual, a mix of theater, survival instinct, and public relations strategy. Whenever a scandal erupts, the government acts by moving the official somewhere else, as if geography could neutralize accountability. From Accra to Abuja, Freetown to Nairobi, the same drama plays out, with the same script, just different actors. Nigeria, the land of perpetual investigations that never end. In Nigeria, reshuffles are often introduced with grand headlines and press conferences, and end quietly in the fine print. When President Bola Ahmed Tinubu reshuffled several ministries amid corruption allegations in 2024, local analysts joked that Nigeria has perfected the art of rearranging the furniture while the roof leaks. A prime example, in 2022, after a customs service bribery scandal, the accused officer was placed in another strategic advisory role. Nigerians laughed bitterly. Ah, advisory role. That's the Nigerian word for early retirement with benefits. The same public frustration is now visible in Sierra Leone. When a government keeps reusing the same officials like recycled plastic, citizens start wondering if there's a shortage of fresh brains or just an addiction to familiarity. Kenya, the polished performer's version. Kenya's reshuffles, by contrast, tend to be more polished, with legalistic justifications and a press release quoting disciplinary realignments. In 2023, after a major customs fraud case at the port of Mombasa, several officers were temporarily reassigned pending investigations. Yet 6 months later, those same officers resurfaced in other ministries. As a Kenyan comedian quipped on NTV, "In Kenya, a suspension is just a paid vacation. By the time you're back, the story has moved on, and so have the bribes." Still, Kenya's strong civil society and investigative media often drag the truth back into the spotlight, something Sierra Leonean journalists like Melvin Mansaray are now courageously doing, sometimes at personal risk. Ghana, selective purity and the sanitized shuffle. Ghana offers another interesting example. The Office of the Special Prosecutor, OSP, has occasionally embarrassed high-ranking officials, only for the accused to later be reappointed under a new ministry. The public often jokes that, in Ghana, the only people who stay fired are those who don't have godfathers. In 2023, after Ghana's Galamsey illegal mining exposés, several regional directors were transferred instead of dismissed, prompting critics to say the government was washing its hands with muddy water. The logic is the same. Accountability gets diluted when loyalty trumps legality. Sierra Leone, the small country big drama syndrome. Sierra Leone's case is more delicate because of its size and interconnected elite circles. Everyone in the upper bureaucracy knows everyone else, so disciplining one person risks embarrassing many. That's why Mansaray's outburst is so important. He's voicing what ordinary citizens whisper in the markets of Freetown. Dem die sack de man, but a day walk die still. Translation, they sack the man, but he's still working there. In short, the reshuffle has become a national joke, and humor in this case is both coping mechanism and protest language. Data check, the numbers behind the narrative. To appreciate the gravity of these governance lapses, let's look at some regional indicators. Country 2024, Corruption Perceptions Index, Transparency International, Public Confidence in Anti-Corruption Institutions, Afrobarometer 2024, Major Scandals, 2023 to 2025, Sierra Leone, 34 out of 100, rank 113. 22% of citizens trust ACC fully immigration drug link, alleged cartel gifts Nigeria. 25 out of 100, rank 145. 16% customs fraud, subsidy theft. Kenya 31 out of 100, rank 126. 24% Mombasa port fraud, COVID fund scandal, Ghana. 43 out of 100, rank 70. 38% illegal mining corruption, procurement fraud, Rwanda. 53 out of 100, rank 49. 72%. Minimal recent scandals, strict accountability, Botswana. 59 out of 100, rank 35. 68% model of institutional stability. Sources, Transparency International 2024. Afrobarometer Round, 9, 2024. Sierra Leone, unfortunately, falls in the bottom tier, with low trust in its anti-corruption agencies and repeated scandals in high-risk sectors like immigration, customs, and policing. Humor meets reality, the African Reshuffle Olympics. If there were a continental competition for creative reassignments, some African leaders would easily take gold medals. Kenya would win Best Press Release. Nigeria would win Most Dramatic Re-Entry After Suspension. Sierra Leone might win Best Plot Twist. From immigration to drugs, same actor. South Africa would get Lifetime Achievement Award for inquiries that take longer than Hollywood trilogies. But behind the laughter lies fatigue. Africans are not laughing with their governments anymore. They're laughing at them. And that's dangerous for democracy because humor can turn into hopelessness. Expert opinions. Accountability in the age of cynicism. Several governance experts and civil society leaders have weighed in on similar patterns across Africa. Dr. Olusegun Oladipo, a Nigerian governance analyst, told the Africa Report that the recycling of tainted officials undercuts reform and tells citizens that connections matter more than competence. Yvonne Atieno, a Kenyan legal scholar, argues that accountability must follow the person, not the office. Otherwise, reshuffling just relabels corruption. Dr. Ibrahim Bangura of Fura Bay College in Freetown recently noted that Sierra Leone's credibility problem is less about policy design and more about policy hypocrisy. Their shared message? Africa's challenge isn't a shortage of institutions, it's a shortage of consistency. Looking ahead, can Sierra Leone flip the script? There's still time for President Bio's administration to redeem itself. A few bold moves could change the story. 1. Suspend, then investigate publicly, not reassign quietly. 2. Empower the ACC to prosecute fearlessly, even if it means crossing political lines. 3. Set a public example by publishing the financial disclosures of all senior officers. 4. Engage Parliament in oversight hearings about drug-related infiltration of immigration systems. 5. Invite ECOWAS and Interpol partnerships for cross-border crime tracking. If Bio's government embraces real reform, it could turn a scandal into a case study in transparency. If not, it will be remembered for perfecting the art of disciplinary musical chairs. A deeper reflection, when governments start to believe their own excuses. Political scientists call this elite insulation. The point when governments convince themselves that public anger is merely opposition propaganda. But history shows that when citizens lose faith in anti-corruption institutions, democracy erodes faster than inflation, devalues the local currency. And speaking of inflation, Sierra Leone's leone has lost over 30% of its value in 2025 alone. World Bank data update, October 2025. When people are struggling to buy bread and then hear that a man caught in a scandal gets another government job, the optics sting twice as hard. So President Bio faces a choice: either make accountability fashionable or watch cynicism become the national language. Beyond borders, how eco-ways and regional bodies can stop the reassignment syndrome. Africa's corruption problem is rarely local. It is regionalized, digitally networked, and financially globalized. When one government quietly reassigns a tainted official instead of disciplining them, it doesn't just harm national credibility. It weakens the regional fight against organized crime, money laundering, and drug trafficking. 1. ECOWAS and the need for a continental code of conduct. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, already has frameworks on good governance and anti-corruption, but these are as toothless as a smiling crocodile without enforcement power. In 2001, ECOWAS adopted a protocol on democracy and good governance, calling for transparent recruitment in public institutions and accountability in public office. But enforcement is almost non-existent. Imagine if ECOWAS introduced a regional integrity register, a blacklist of officials found guilty or under credible investigation for corruption who cannot hold public office across member states. That would mean a disgraced immigration officer in Sierra Leone cannot show up as a consultant in Liberia or Guinea. A Nigerian customs official caught in a smuggling racket cannot suddenly become an ECOWAS logistics advisor in Accra. That's the kind of regional deterrent the continent needs. But to get there, ECOWAS must evolve from a talk shop to a teeth shop, able to bite, not just bark. 2. The African Union's quiet success story, Rwanda's model. Love or hate its leadership style, Rwanda is one of Africa's few examples where corruption has become a career-ending offense. If Sierra Leone borrowed even half of Rwanda's zero-tolerance enforcement, this current immigration drug law scandal wouldn't be unfolding like a tragicomedy. In Kigali, an official accused of accepting gifts from a fugitive would be under investigation before sunrise, and possibly in handcuffs by lunch. Rwanda's trick isn't magic, it's threefold. Swift investigation. No political immunity for friends of the regime. A culture that equates corruption with shame, not cleverness. Until that cultural shift happens in Sierra Leone and much of West Africa, journalists like Melvin Mansaray will continue shouting into the wind. The youth factor, Africa's new anti-corruption army. If old men are busy reshuffling chairs, Africa's youth are busy reshaping narratives. Across the continent, digital activism is rewriting the rules of accountability. 1. Sierra Leone's Gen Z journalists and bloggers. Young Sierra Leoneans on TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, and Facebook Live have become unofficial auditors of government performance. When the video of the immigration officer accepting the alleged gift surfaced, it was shared over 300,000 times in 48 hours, long before mainstream TV stations caught up. The Bio administration underestimated how fast public outrage can spread in the digital era. In the old days, a scandal could be buried under bureaucracy. In 2025, it's buried under hashtags, and hashtags are immortal. 2. From Sacre Ensars to Dakar End reshuffles. The Nigerian Chakyobai Ensars movement of 2020 inspired a whole generation of African youth to demand transparency and justice. Sierra Leone's youth could follow that path by launching a civic movement, say, as in End Reassignments, to protest the recycling of disgraced officials. Imagine banners reading, "Stop promoting corruption, we're not recycling trash." Accountability is not a transfer letter. Humor meets activism, a language African leaders find difficult to ignore, especially when it starts trending internationally. The digital battlefield, how technology can reinforce accountability. 1. The power of open data. In 2024, Ghana launched an online asset declaration portal for senior officials. Citizens can now cross-check declared assets against actual lifestyles. Sierra Leone's ACC could easily replicate this. If the former immigration chief truly bought houses in the United States, as Mansaray alleged, such discrepancies would be exposed instantly through an open database linked to land registries and banks. 2. Blockchain for bureaucracy. It might sound futuristic, but African governments are already testing blockchain-based civil service registries to track appointments, contracts, and financial disclosures. Imagine a system where every government reassignment is logged, time-stamped, and public. Citizens could literally see who moved where and why, eliminating the mystery of secret transfers. Media and civil society, the lifeline of African democracy. While governments often treat journalists as irritants, history shows that democracy thrives where the press pokes hardest. Melvin Mansaray's courage mirrors that of journalists like Anas Arameo, Anas in Ghana, who exposed judicial corruption through undercover work, John Allen Namu in Kenya, who revealed high-level fraud, Dele Olojede in Nigeria, who championed post-war accountability. Their collective message is simple. When governments fail to police themselves, journalism becomes the last court of appeal. Yet across Africa, these voices face intimidation, censorship, or, as in Sierra Leone's case, dismissive government responses. If President Bio truly believes in his New Direction agenda, he should treat critics like Mansaray not as enemies, but as free consultants, offering feedback at zero cost to the taxpayer. Africa's future, from reshuffles to results. Africa's next generation won't tolerate the same old excuses. They are not impressed by long titles, official cars, or televised sackings that end with new appointments. They want results, and they have data, smartphones, and global solidarity to demand it. As Mansaray said on Liberty Online TV, accountability must be consistent, not selective. That one sentence might outlive this entire controversy because it captures the spirit of a continent in transition, from political performance to measurable progress. The next frontier, technology as Africa's anti-corruption weapon. If accountability were a software, Africa would still be running version 1.0, last updated in 1985. But that's changing. Across the continent, innovative tools are quietly rewriting how corruption is detected, reported, and punished. 1. Artificial intelligence and data analytics. Countries like Kenya, Rwanda, and Ghana are experimenting with data-driven monitoring of government procurement. Algorithms now flag suspicious contracts, unusual budget variations, or repeated tenders to the same company. Sierra Leone's Anti-Corruption Commission, ACC, could easily adapt such systems to track migration records, visa approvals, and government appointments. For instance, a properly coded AI system would have flagged the suspicious reassignment of the former immigration chief as a high-risk move, not just an HR shuffle. 2. Mobile apps and citizen reporting. Nigeria's Follow the Money initiative, South Africa's Corruption Watch, and Ghana's Integrity app allow citizens to anonymously report bribery, nepotism, and contract inflation. Imagine if Sierra Leone launched Speak Up Salone, a nationwide mobile app linking whistleblower tips directly to the ACC, media, and parliament. Technology does not stop corruption by itself. It forces transparency that makes corruption uncomfortable. 3. Blockchain-based accountability. In countries like Estonia and Rwanda, blockchain systems already secure land registries and ID databases, making it nearly impossible to sell the same land twice. If Sierra Leone's property records or immigration appointments were blockchain logged, journalists like Melvin Mansaray wouldn't need leaked videos. The evidence would be on-chain, immutable, and public. The price tag of corruption, counting the cost of political recycling. Every time a scandalous official is reassigned instead of removed, 3 bills arrive: economic, political, and moral. Impact area cost description. Estimated regional impact, West Africa, 2023-2025. Economic lost revenue from smuggling, inflated contracts, and tax evasion, US $5 billion annually, ECOWAS Secretariat estimate. Political decline in public trust, reduced voter turnout, and democratic fatigue. 20 to 30% drop in voter participation across 8 countries. Moral social normalization of corruption as smartness, growing youth, cynicism, and brain drain. In Sierra Leone alone, corruption and poor governance cost the country nearly 15% of its GDP annually, according to the World Bank, 2024. When leadership recycles compromised officials, it is essentially rehiring inefficiency at taxpayer expense. The new breed of African leaders, a glimpse of hope. Despite the gloom, there's a new generation of African reformists who understand that transparency sells better than propaganda. Samia Suluhu Hassan of Tanzania has strengthened parliamentary oversight and dismissed corrupt officials regardless of political ties. Hakainde Hichilema of Zambia has digitized revenue collection, limiting human interference. Paul Kagame of Rwanda, controversial yet efficient, has institutionalized accountability through automation and fear of consequence. William Ruto of Kenya, under immense pressure, has at least begun to make procurement data public. These are not saints, but they show that reform is possible when leaders decide to be remembered for progress rather than patronage. A final word of advice to African leaders. 1. Don't confuse reassignment with reform. Moving a problem from one department to another doesn't solve it. It only changes the stationery. 2. Empower. Don't politicize anti-corruption agencies. Let watchdogs bite without waiting for permission. If the ACC, EFCC, or OSP reports to the president must resist the urge to act as chief defender of the accused. 3. Digitize transparency. Publish budgets, tenders, and asset declarations online. Light chases away corruption better than slogans. 4. Invest in youth accountability movements. Africa's young population is not the problem. It is the pressure valve. Give them civic tools, not tear gas. 5. Lead by example. The surest way to end corruption is to make it socially unacceptable, starting from the top. A leader who travels with modesty, declares assets publicly, and fires friends who steal sends a message more powerful than any speech. Key takeaways. Lessons from Sierra Leone to the continent. Accountability must be consistent, not selective. The public no longer buys the sack and smile routine. Digital transparency is the new frontier. Technology exposes patterns that press releases can't hide. Youth activism is Africa's strongest moral currency. Ignore it at your peril. Regional cooperation can end impunity. ECOWAS and the AU must enforce, not just endorse, good governance. Leadership is not about loyalty, it's about legacy. Every reassignment without reform adds a stain to that legacy. Closing reflection. Africa at the crossroads of comedy and consequence. As Sierra Leone's President Bio faces growing scrutiny over his reshuffling of a scandal-tainted immigration chief, one thing becomes clear. Africans are tired of watching political theater while their economies sink and their hopes migrate. The continent doesn't need new ministries or new titles. It needs new mindsets. Because in the end, as Melvin Mansaray's critique reminds us, you can't fight corruption with corruption's cousin. Until leaders across Africa realize that accountability is not a game of musical chairs, the music may stop, and when it does, there might not be any seats left to sit on. Thank you for watching The Bold African Voice, BAV, where we speak truth to power and power to the people. From Freetown to Lagos, from Nairobi to Accra, Africa is waking up to demand real change, not recycled corruption. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this video. Subscribe and click the notification bell, because Africa's boldest stories start right here.